the Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a nice hot day. The first really hot day of the year, which is why I'm here wearing this stylish t-shirt advertising the Smiths album Meat is Murder. Sadly, being a big fat bloke, it makes me look like Demis Roussos. But as nobody watching this under the age of 50 will know who Demis Roussos is, it doesn't really matter. By the way, just for the record, I had to edit one little bit of what the lovely Charlotte is just about to say, so I replaced her voice in 2 words with the sound of a comedy duck. I think you'll understand why.
Maxine said that Pope was charging 50 quid for people to talk to him for 4 minutes.
That's just completely appalling. I never liked the man anyway, but that's just the action of a complete... Hello everybody, I'm Hennis, and I don't have a very good feeling about this.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the sultry country musical stylings of Nashville's very own Wayne Lovejuice.
What a revolting name.
The ufologist agent said the ufologist's expensive, too expensive to come to the phone. I said that I'd known him for 25 years more or less, so why couldn't I speak to him alone? The ufologist agent said it's his new business model, 'cause no one buys his books anymore. And the operator said 50 quid more for the next 4 minutes. Well, I did warn you.
I really like the old credits.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm not sure if it is afternoon where you are, but it's afternoon here, so I'm sticking with it. There's a very funny bit in one of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books, which said that the advent of time travel changed the grammar of the human species forever, because you could suddenly talk about things you were going to do in the past, or things that you had done in the future. Well, I know it's not the same, but when you're putting out a regular show every Saturday afternoon, it sometimes feels like I'm in some sort of weird temporal anomaly of my own. But then again, I guess my whole life feels like I'm in some sort of weird temporal anomaly of my own, so I don't know what I'm making such a big deal about. When you're putting out a regular show every Saturday afternoon, and you're filming them and editing them a couple of weeks in advance, somehow it feels like it, because I'm now doing something which you guys aren't going to watch at least until the Saturday afternoon of the week after next. So it's a little bit of a logistical and linguistic conundrum for me. But anyway, good afternoon. My name's John Downs, just in case you didn't know. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and once a week on Saturday afternoons I take to the airwaves to talk to you on YouTube about stuff which I think you may find interesting, which usually means the stuff that I find interesting. Now I've got something very interesting for you before we hit the main crux, the main meat and potatoes of this episode. Some weeks ago, I'm sure you will remember that we were talking about a claim that had been made in one of India's more prestigious news outlets that there were cheetahs living in Bangladesh. Well, this claim was accompanied by pictures of a jaguar, a creature which is only found in South America, as I'm sure you all know, and which I originally misidentified as a leopard, a creature which is found in the Indian subcontinent. But jaguars have never been found anywhere in India or Bangladesh or Pakistan or any of the countries in that region, anywhere in Asia, for example. Now, the same thing's happened again. 2 weeks later, I have got a news story that's turned up in another one of India's very prestigious news outlets, and it claims that this is a picture or video of a cheetah having a difference of opinion with a crocodile. Well, it's not. It's a jaguar having a difference of opinion with what I assume is a caiman, although I will have to admit here that my skills in trying to tell the different parts of the crocodilians apart are fairly hit and miss at best. So I'd be very grateful if Richard, that's Richard Freeman, or Carl, or anybody else would like to tell me how to do it in a rule of thumb that's easy enough for an old fool like me to understand. Put it in the comments below, and let's hope that your knowledge takes seed in the fruitful forests of my cerebral cortex. Now, in the last segment, I was actually talking about how difficult it is to keep up to the moment and keep up to date with news stories when you're publishing things several weeks in advance. Well, this story is a case in point. This story only happened about 90 years ago, and it is something which occurred in the River Humber near the town of Hull. As you probably know, I subscribe to Google News Alerts in order to be able to keep the various blogs that the CFZ maintain up to date. And a few days ago, this story turned up in my Lake Monster news alert. And it tells the story of a river monster in the River Humber, which I'd never actually come across before. I'll just quote, if I may, from the original news story. When Cleethorpes inshore boatmen who earned a precarious living line fishing in the river suddenly realised their lines were being stripped of fish, poachers were blamed at first, but two fishermen called Kerman and Reeder decided to keep a nighttime vigil. Early in the morning of February the 2nd, 1934, Kerman, who had been standing up in the boat watching and waiting, gave a yell and fell back on Reeder. Struck speechless, he could only point in the water. According to the article, the men saw a terrific swirl rapidly moving away from the boat, which vanished in the direction of Tetney Haven. 2 days later, on February the 4th, 1934, William Croft of Royston Street, Cleethorpes, who spent 51 of his 60 years fishing in the Humber, also spotted the Humber monster, and not for the first time. He told the Grimsby Telegraph, "You can take it from me. It's no porpoise. It had a great head like a Great Dane, ears and a mane on its neck. There was about 2 feet of head and neck out of the water. Again, just 2 days after this, on February the 6th, 1934, Thomas Atkinson of Barnsley Street, Hull, reported sighting the mysterious creature. According to Hull Daily Mail, he'd been walking with his wife and children by the riverside when they saw something black swimming in the Humber. The Atkinson family, interested in the sighting, stopped to watch the creature, but when it turned towards them and stared back at them with eyes the size of portholes, the family fled to safety. And that, boys and girls, is all I have. It seems to be a fairly classic sighting of a merhorse, which is one of Heuvelmann's categories of sea serpent, which have been criticised and reclassified in recent years, but it seems a fairly classic sighting. And I'd be interested to know if anybody knows whether anything else like this has ever happened in that area before or since. Please let me know in the comments below. I'm very much a country boy at heart. I don't like cities. I certainly didn't like living in cities. But there are a few disadvantages to being out in the country. For example, back when I first moved out here to look after my father in his last illness, the then Prime Minister, Tony Blair, and don't get me started on him, had made a promise to everybody that he would give broadband to any rural community that wanted it, as long as enough people signed a petition. So I joined in and signed the petition, and lo and behold, we got given broadband. But to the best of my knowledge, although we've got broadband, in fact we've got quite fast broadband, we haven't had new telephone wires down the back of underneath the road that leads down outside my house, and the house done for the last 1500 years. We haven't had new wires put in there since sometime in the late 1970s, which means that although our internet speed is fairly fast, we quite often get glitches. And when you're interviewing somebody by Zoom, these glitches become really quite annoying. The other day I interviewed the legendary Doug Hajicek about various things he has done in his career, and this is the first part of his interview with us, and I am afraid it is a little bit glitchy because of the aforementioned technical problems. Don't blame me, blame Tony Blair, and that's a fairly good rule of thumb which will get you through life at any point. But it's a very interesting interview. So first of all, I asked Doug how he'd first got interested in cryptozoology.
My interest, where did it come from? Man, that's a tough one. Because it's so many little baby steps. Obviously, the ever exposed to cryptozoology on any level was seeing the cover of Boy's Life magazine. And larger was a still photo. You know, it was blown up, covered the entire cover. And I saw that in the school library, and boy, did I. And right away, in my mind, I thought, it's not suit, because growing up, there were a lot of bad suits on TV, you know. It just didn't look like a suit. So I grew up thinking it was real from a young age. And then everything was good, encounters or any real interest until I went deer hunting one day, Jonathan. And I was sitting on my deer stand in the dark up in northern Minnesota. I was up there with my uncle, my best friend, and my two cousins. And our deer stands are about a quart. Well, right when the sun started coming up, I smelled this horrid smell. It was so bad I had to cover my scarf and my coat, and I'm just breathing that. Oh my God! Well, it's beautifully fresh, because I'd already been there probably half an hour, um, and the sun is still just barely coming up, breathing this horrible stink. And I hear chest beating, like from a gorilla, very very loud. And I already had grouse hunting. I knew grouse sounded when they beat their wings. And I knew that was the only other animal I could do even. But this was shaking my body. It was loud. It was certainly not coming from a bird. And then the smell disappeared, sounded like chest beating. And I sat here stand. Of course, during the chest beating, I had quickly loaded a cartridge into my chamber, because you don't cartridge in your chamber when it's dark, because you don't even want to be tempted to be still dark. And I loaded one in with chest beating. Didn't see a deer all day. Went to meet everybody for lunch, and our day got down there, and literally my cousin, do you want to hear what happened to me? And I said, let me. It was the exact that happened to me. Then Mark chimed in, my other cousin, same story. My uncle, same story, same story. So here was this big group of people a quarter mile apart that all at one time during their hunt had smelled this horrible smell and felt the chest beating, heard the chest beating. And so that kind of, I would imagine, raised my level. And I was very much into wildlife researcher, doing stuff with black bears, beavers, underwater, setting up like camera systems for every channel online. And I was up but before that, I was up to a lake called Selwyn Lake, the Arctic Circle. And we were up there to try to film giant lark. That was our mission. That's why we were up there. And we had to go to the bathroom and just take a pee because it was so rough, the water that day, that we didn't want one side of the boat falling over. So we went to shore, found a nice little cove, went to shore. And there, when we beached our boat on the beach, and they were big humanoid type footprints, with toes and everything in the sand. They were quite detailed. And we just thought, what the heck? And of course, we relieved ourselves and then started to follow the footprints. And we followed up and turned to pea gravel. They were quite deep, almost an inch deep in the pea gravel. And I had my friend who was 300 pounds jump off a rock. And I said, Rick, jump off that rock and dent the soil. And it happened to be drizzling on the day we were there. So the soil he jumps off the rock and didn't even dent the pea gravel. So then we continued to follow the tracks. And the thing that got me the most, it was life-changing, is when I saw a footprint in front of a tree trunk of about a stunted black spruce, because we're right at the tree line. Whether it's too far north, I guess like Scotland or areas there in Shiles. And there was a footprint in front of the tree trunk and then one right direct. Of course, the only logical thing you can think of is that it stepped over the tree. Just stepped over it, and the footprints were far apart and in a perfectly straight line. There was no deviation. You could round it and get up and, get your foot straightened out in front of the tree. And that's when literally said to leave. Literally. everybody but me, and I wanted to push on. Rick saying, we don't want to this, it's big. And so we pushed on a bit. We got beyond this little tiny tree line, little tundra. We could see the footprints off into the distance. And I mean, they went way off into the distance in the, and there were no trees. Then there was a little stand of trees off in the distance again. But the trees were, and we had a back at the base camp. And so we all piled into the boat. I did film the track and take still pictures. I took nice video. We did a stand-up for the news department that I was working for over at Carol 11. We headed back over to where the plane was, which was probably 20 some miles away. And so we took this terrible back, slapping our butts on this wooden seat, back at high speed. We get back to camp. We go in for a Gordy, the pilot, and somebody says he's in his tent, and so we go over to the tent. He's staying in this big tent, and we told him what we had found. And it's kind of a tradition in these jokes on people, and of course, he didn't look too happy with us. I think he thought we were trying to play a joke, pushed it a bit. Gordy, whatever this is, we can follow it by air because it can't hide. There's no place to hide. If there are trees above the trees, or we're going to still be able to see it. And he got mad. He threw his clipboard against the tent wall and get out. And I'll never forget how red his face was. So we left the tent, and that was the end of it. I mean, never tried again. So that was my life-changing moment that got me really interested in cryptozoology. I got best. Just started looking for information, getting books, going to the library, doing whatever I could to try to figure out, are these things, what's the history? So I was pretty obsessed. I actually got a hold of from at that time, of course, it was just Matt Moneymaker of the BFRO. And, Matt educated me, interested that I was a filmmaker and that I was a wildlife filmmaker. And we became friends, simply said, hey, I film, on these things. And so we should work together to try to get a film made. After pitching Legend Meets Science for quite a long time, probably 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I don't even happening. We just kept meeting. Film distributors kept getting turned down. And finally, Discovery Channel said yes. And Discovery said go. And so we did a deal with Discovery, and Legend Meets Science was born. And that was my first film on the topic. Not be familiar with. There was Dr. Jeff Meldrum wrote a book on it.
He's one of the
Or a book.
guys, isn't he? Jeff Meldrum is a
Yeah.
remarkable man.
Yep. I was, very pleased, just at kind of the response. But right before the document Discovery Channel, that whole Bob Hieronymus thing came forward, and that was getting a ton of press. And I remember my exec at Discovery calling me up and going, "Oh, I guess we can't air the show now." And my heart just sunk, And then I stood up for myself, and I said, "That's a bunch of, it's on Just a Guy's Claims, the whole history of everything." And he said, "Okay, let's air it then." And so it was a close call, not airing. And I would imagine in your line of study, Jonathan, you're very skeptical. But at that point in my life, I was skeptical also, which is why I was looking for answers. I wanted to get information that was available out there and add some new information. So my goal was, I didn't go into it as a but went in there as somebody with a ton of questions. And I think that to this day, even though I believe, I guess, like a bet, are they real or not real? I would put my money on they're real. Just the complete piles of anecdotal evidence, eyewitnesses that blow my mind in sincerity. Our last night, for instance, it was very long. From a man who has never told his story. It happened to him and his friend, is actually two other up in Manitoba, Flin. And the story goes on and on and on, and it's extremely detailed. They had a great site beach on the lake, out in the open. The guy got injured. He sprained his ankle. He threw a log at them. Black bear involved that was very skittish and afraid of the trees before this thing made its appearance. It actually took a fish from these men's stringer. But at the end, he goes, gee, I feel a lot better telling that story. He felt like he confessed. When you get letters like that week after week after week, month after month, for years, including from police, game wardens, Forest Service workers, people who know what they're doing. And it just, once again, gets me to the point where I would put my money on them being real. But I'm sure, even though I've seen a couple, I've not seen their face. And it's the most amazing mystery because it's one of those mysteries that's fueled constantly. It's never going to go away. It's not ever going away. The unicorn mystery has gone away. If there ever was one, it doesn't get fueled. There's a lot of, or things are fabled creatures or a myth and fable that just don't get fueled, and that's why they're just, no one's reporting unicorn. Or very, very small amount of people are recording things like fairies and elves, other mythical, creatures. And so they don't get fueled. But this is something that's happening to ordinary people, hunters, pilots, bush pilots. This goes on and on and on. I talked to a postmaster that was out delivering mail. And, he had a sighting early in the morning delivering mail. People, then you can talk to them for an hour and they're just... So, the anecdotal evidence to me is quite overwhelming. I know there's sightings even in the UR. I don't know. I don't think there's that many, but there are some pretty decent sightings.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer and I are telling you, please remember to ring that notification bell. Otherwise you won't be told when we've got another show. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, animals and men, is it. That is it for this show, and I hope you enjoyed it. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who helped me put it together, particularly Graham and Carl and Doug for his very, very gracious interview, and of course Louis, Maxine and Charlotte, who all do their inimitable things. I'll be back next Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and it's only 7 days away. So, until then, I've only got one thing else to say to you guys, and that's be seeing you.